Are you ready to invest in cryptocurrency? If so, you're in the right place, because this is Crypto for Christians, where we talk to Christians about how to get involved with cryptocurrency, the blockchain technology, and all the interesting and fun changes we see happening in our future. So we're going to talk to you today about exactly how to do that, about how to get started in investing in cryptocurrency, how to, do all the basic things you have to do to be able to transfer some money into an account and that kind of thing. So Alex, are you ready to tell us what we need to know about how to get started investing in cryptocurrency?
I'm always ready. And so I'll probably just dive right in. One of the first things we want to cover about what a crypto investment is just that this is a high volatility and potentially high risk investment. So it's very, very important that this not be the very first investment that you've ever made. So to all my Christian friends out there, I certainly hope that, number one, you have a savings account. And if you don't have a savings account, go ahead and put some money into savings. This is money that you have for a rainy day in case your car breaks down or someone that you love falls into trouble and you want to be able to come to the rescue. So a nice little savings account is a very good thing. And the next thing you may want to have is some kind of a retirement account where you're making some very safe and traditional investments so that every month a little bit of the money that you make goes into something for retirement. Now, once you're feeling comfortable with those investment vehicles, then you can start looking at higher risk investments. And in fact, it is the case that investment professionals often do recommend that people take a small portion of their investment portfolio and put it into what are called high risk, high return investments. Now that we're talking about investing, of course, this is when we have to remind our viewers that neither you nor I are an investment professional. You're an ordained pastor. You have a lot to say and a lot for people to learn about with regard to finding your moral compass and where God fits into your life and how this can be the most beneficial thing in your life. And I am a crypto enthusiast. I love blockchain technology. I spend a lot of time studying it. But we are neither of us investment professionals. And it is really important that people not take our advice as investment advice, just as ideas and education and things to maybe ask their investment professional. But when you get to the point where you feel like you've got some money that you would like to put into a high risk and potentially high return investment, then it could be time for you to invest in cryptocurrency. And so how do you do that? And today we're going to cover all about how to do that. So the only real way to get started is to find a trustworthy cryptocurrency exchange. Now, there are a number of these. I'll name just a few. One of them is Kraken.com, Kraken.com. Another one is KuCoin.com, KuCoin.com. And these are two of the larger cryptocurrency exchanges. Another one is called CoinDesk, and most people may have heard about it. And this particular crypto exchange is listed on the US Stock Exchange, on the New York Stock Exchange. So you might think of that as being one of the more reputable crypto exchanges. In general, these are large companies that make large amounts of money, and so they are regarded as generally trustworthy. Now, that doesn't make the cryptocurrency that they're selling any safer of an investment, but these are not companies that are likely to sort of steal your money or take your money. These are reputable places where if you put money on the exchange, it will sit there. And if you buy cryptocurrency on the exchange, it will also sit there most likely and still be effectively secure. But these are not insured by the FDIC or any other company. So what that means is that if the cryptocurrency loses all of its value, you will lose all of your money. And I want to put out there to our listeners first. This is potentially a high-risk investment because cryptocurrency is so new. Now then, that same fact is why there are investment opportunities in cryptocurrency that are truly unlike any other asset class. And why? Because these things can increase in value unlike any asset class. And so in the crypto world, investments that increase by a factor of 500% are not particularly uncommon. In fact, investments that increase by a factor of 1,000% are not particularly uncommon. And in fact, in the crypto world, that is simply referred to as a 10x. 10x meaning that it's now worth 10 times the value that you originally invested in it. And people have the opportunity to make an enormous amount of money. There are also cases where cryptocurrencies can go up by a factor of 100x, 10,000%. And I would love to tell you that this is very uncommon, but it isn't actually even that uncommon. 100x cryptocurrency increases do happen. They can happen in less than a year. They can sometimes happen in less than 3 months, depending on the cryptocurrency. Now, trying to pick which one is going to increase by that kind of a factor, now that's very, very difficult. And I don't recommend that people start by trying to find that. Right. What I recommend is that when people want to get into cryptocurrency, they go ahead and take the time and trouble to get some money onto an exchange. That means they'll take some dollars and deposit it onto an exchange. With many of the exchanges, this is rather difficult. There's one exchange that makes it quite easy for the first 30 days, and this is at crypto.com. We don't have any endorsements on this channel, but right. Crypto.com offers an opportunity to new investors, which is that for the first 30 days, they don't charge any percentage on making deposits onto the exchange, and you can actually use your bank card to deposit fiat currency onto crypto.com. Once it's there, it takes about, I would say, a day or two for the currency to show up for your first time, and then after that, it shows up instantly. And you can just use your bank card to buy cryptocurrency. And they have quite a nice selection of cryptos to choose from too, by the way. Now, the next question obviously would be which cryptos to buy. So viewer beware that I probably own some of almost every cryptocurrency I will discuss on the program. And this is less a product of me wanting to pump or recommend these cryptocurrencies as it is a product of the fact that I happen to own a lot of different kinds of cryptocurrency. Right. So don't, just because I say I own some of it, I don't want you to assume that perhaps I think it's a particularly good one. I buy cryptos that I like, and I buy cryptos that I don't like as much, just to cover my bases in what I do believe is an expanding market. Now, if you decide not to go the crypto.com route, you may find that it's rather cumbersome to get money onto an exchange. Frequently, this will require a bank transfer. You'll have to go down to your bank. You'll have to fill out a special form and requisition funds. Your bank will charge you quite a bit of money for this. They will charge perhaps $50 to send $5,000, and they may charge you $75 to send more than that. And so this is an example of the old banking system that cryptocurrency actually solves, but transferring from one account to another, when you're talking about transferring outside the bank, is both pricey and time consuming. It will typically take 2 or 3 days from the time that you initiate the transfer from your bank to actually have the funds arrive and be usable at the crypto exchange. And this is normal. This is typical of other kinds of, stock exchanges or stockbroker accounts, things of this nature. But a bank transfer may be necessary. Once the money has cleared on the other side, and again, it can take up to a day or two for it to clear. That means that your crypto exchange is now confident that this was real money that you sent them and not some pretend electronic signal. Because the money that's being transferred is not cryptocurrency, there's no assurance on the other end that this is real money. And they have to do multiple dozens and sometimes hundreds and even thousands of confirmations with all the different computers on both sides to assure that you actually have funds on the exchange. Once that happens, Buying the cryptocurrency itself is relatively easy. It's a point and click type of a thing. You select the currency, select the amount you want to spend, and it will tell you how many of each cryptocurrency you can afford. And then you just click buy, and then it appears on your exchange account. And from there, the process is fairly straightforward. But I haven't answered yet which cryptocurrencies I think you should buy. And what I'm going to suggest is that people make their first purchases in what are called large cap cryptos. And large cap cryptos mean that these are the more popular ones. These are all ones we've already discussed on this channel. These would be things like Bitcoin and Ethereum, of course. And then you would get into things like Binance and Cardano, of course. You would get into things like Polkadot and Chainlink. And you could look into something like Litecoin just to get some familiarity with what it's like to own a cryptocurrency. One of the first things you'll notice about owning cryptocurrency is that the price will fluctuate. So let's say you started with, I'll just use a round number, like $1,000. So you've put $1,000 onto an exchange and you've bought $1,000 worth of, let's just say, Chainlink. Well, don't be surprised if you check on your investment the following day and it's no longer $1,000. It might be $1,100 or it might be $900, because a 10% fluctuation is actually quite common on a daily basis in the world of cryptocurrency. And this is something that you'll have to develop some familiarity with. Don't get excited if it goes up 20%. Oh boy, I made a great choice. Don't get too excited, because it will go down by 20% in another day or two quite easily. It's a very, very volatile investment. It will hopefully retain value over time, but there is no guarantee of that. So that's what I suggest for people getting started. As they go forward in their crypto adventure, what I recommend is more interest and more research to do on new programs being built on good platforms. So in our last couple of shows, we've talked about some of the big blockchains. These are Ethereum, Cardano. We talked about Avalanche. And we're calling these layer 1 solutions. Sometimes we call Avalanche a layer 0 solution, but we're actually just giving them a compliment when we say that. But these are freestanding blockchains, and you can buy that cryptocurrency, and probably all of those are going to be larger cap options that new investors can look into. But what's very interesting, and where you get into the very high rates of return, are when you buy programs on some of those larger blockchains. And so if you buy something like SushiSwap, when it was new, SushiSwap, I think, went from about 11 cents, and it now sells up in the $10 to $20 per token price range. And so people who bought into that program early have, experienced an enormous return on their investment. And so people have to be prepared for encountering some of that as well. And as we go forward on the channel, we'll talk more and more about how you can locate those individual programs that get built on the different blockchains. We've got some specific methods we'll be recommending on this channel. But before I go any further, one of the two topics that this brings up is the kinds of psychological forces that can act on people as they enter into a new market. They're afraid of missing out. They want to buy something before it's gone. And also, they also will start to experience greed. So let's say they invest $1,000 in hopes of making $4,000. Well, first of all, that would be a pretty good return on your investment. That's 4x. And then they get to $4,000. And what we find, Rick, is that people won't sell. And the reason they won't sell is they're now holding on because they want to make $10,000. Now, the word I'm trying not to use is the G word. This is greed. And what we find is that people will hang on, even though they've made an enormous amount of money, and they hang on, waiting for it just to go on endlessly. And then they don't sell. And then, of course, the market returns back to some version of sanity. And then they lose all of these unrealized gains. And so this is one of the things where I think Christians may have an advantage. If we're aware of greed ahead of time, is there a way to be biblical in our trading behavior, in our investing behavior, so that we don't get eaten up by demon greed?
Well, Alex, I'll jump in here on that. I believe that what the best way to address that is to think about things beforehand and actually put down a written plan. Because if you have a plan in place and you can stick to your plan, then you can avoid that trap of greed. And I'm not saying that guarantees it, because you have to be disciplined to be able to stick to your plan. But if you were to look at your plan, one thing I know you've discussed before is the idea that, let's just say, we'll follow your example and say that investment into whichever one goes up 4 times, right? And now from 1,000 to 4,000. Well, think of it this way. You've basically been handed this $3,000 gift that you didn't have before. You had the $1,000 to start. So I think a really practical thing to do would be to say, why don't I pull out $2,000? And so now I've doubled my money in whatever period of time, and that's a great return in almost any investment. So sure thing, pull that out, and then you have that other amount still there that you could say, okay, sure, if it goes back to whatever it was, if it goes back down, then in essence, technically you didn't really lose anything, because like you said, it was unrealized gain. Now, another option would be just to take all 4,000 back out and then wait for it to go down somewhat and then invest a portion of that back in. And that's another option to do. But my main point was that from a Christian perspective, what we want to do is to apply the discipline of planning, because that is something which, while we know that no matter what our plans are, his plans are going to be much more likely to happen than our plans. Our plans are sort of ideas and visions and concepts that we can think that might happen, whereas we know that what God wants to have happen will happen. So that's really not really important, though, so much to this discussion, as much as we should be able to be clear that if we have a plan in place at first, like the other option would be, what happens if it goes down and your $1,000 becomes $500? You might say, well, what do I do now? Do I get out and just, hope for the best and oh, well, too bad? You could, or you could say, well, this was money that I had chosen to put into this investment, and I believe that it's a good quality, coin, and that it may go up later, later on. We know it is a very volatile market. So just let it ride. And that's just going to be what I would say. If I was going to write a plan right now and you said, I knew I had $1,000 that was in essence not something I needed for groceries or any emergency expenses in the future, I had all of those bases covered, then, and I wanted to invest in this and say, we'll see what happens with it, then I would basically write that plan and say, if it goes, goes to 4 times, I'll take half off the table and then leave the other half to ride and see what happens. Because, that way you've really gotten your money back already, even more so. And then you haven't lost in that case, and you actually have gained. And so you've insured your gain, and then you also don't miss out on any future gains. So, that works out really well. That's what I would suggest. I should say what I would do. Now, again, if it goes down, I would say, well, I expected that this might happen. And the only way to be sure that I don't, not the only way, but the one way I can expect to ride through this volatile market is that if it goes all the way to 0, well, I knew that could happen, but it might be less likely. And then, see what happens with that. And I believe that is a biblical way to do this, because We know that one parable that Jesus told talks about the different talents that were distributed to the different servants. And one of the most important points about this parable that I like to make is God did expect a return. He gave 10 talents to the one servant, 5 to the other, and 1 to, or I should say the master in the story, which I believe does represent God. But he gave 10 to one servant, 5 to the other, and 1 to the other. And so I forget the numbers. It was 10, 5, and 2, maybe, or 1, whichever it is. There's another one that he said with 5, 2, and 1. In any case, the bottom line is he expected a return. So when he came back and the one servant said, "Here, I've actually doubled your money. Here's twice as much as you originally had," the master was very pleased with that. And so this, even in Jesus' time, a 2 times return was considered a very good return and possible, right? Jesus wouldn't have said it if it wasn't possible. So if we see that that's a good thing that happens, well, then let's go ahead and preserve that and say, yes, let's keep that. So anyway, the point is that I believe it is biblical. God does want us to be able to make investments, to be able to get a return, and to be wise in what we do with this. And even if we make an investment and it doesn't work out, that's always a possibility. God doesn't disapprove of that. He still wants us to make the investment. The one servant who didn't fare well in the end was the servant who didn't even make an investment. He didn't even take it down to the bank and put it there available to be lent out, and so at least make some interest, like you said, even just a savings account, which that was the servant who the Lord said he was wicked. He was actually wicked for not making an investment and trying to achieve some return. So that to me makes a lot of sense when we look at all of this, that we want to make an investment, we want to be wise about it, but also have a plan. That's the most important point, is to have a plan, be disciplined to stick with it. And then that way we can say, well, whatever happens, I know what I'm going to do. And if we stick to that plan, then I believe that's what God would want us to do.
That is really helpful, Rick. And I appreciate so much you going through this for folks, because I think that, these markets do have these factors of greed and fear of missing out and the emotions that run high. And I think it's very easy for me as a Christian to lose sight of my moral compass, my biblical foundation, my relationship with God in these matters. And having you counsel like this is just so exceptionally useful for me. And I think I very much hope for our viewers as well. Where I'd like to end this show for our viewers is helping them understand, why might they want to invest in crypto? Why invest in this high risk investment and not something else like a high risk stock? Okay, because there's some nice risky plays out there in the stock market too. What makes crypto different? And what makes crypto different is something that you'll encounter right when you start to attempt to make this investment, which is that there is some difficulty involved. There is some complexity. You'll have to figure it out. You'll have to stick with it. You'll have to work hard. You'll have to do some research. And what you find in the research is going to be a little bit daunting. You'll find out that the price history on some of these cryptocurrencies is a little bit scary. When we get into buying some of the smaller cap coins, the level of complexity increases. So you'll end up go on to a decentralized finance exchange. It's actually a little bit difficult to do. Now, I don't want to make it sound like it's very difficult, because it isn't very difficult. But the reality, Rick, is that most people won't go to the trouble, okay? And what I know about my Christian friends is that these are people who take pride in their hard work. They're willing to do the work necessary to make the world a better place. And they're no stranger to hard work. They're invested. They're the kinds of people that do make investments. And I think this favors the Christian investor. This is something that's perfect. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. And as we know, only 2 or 3% of people are currently involved in the crypto space, even though we believe that in a decade, that number will be 10 times or perhaps 20 times more. And of course, the value of all cryptocurrencies will increase by at least that factor in that period of time. So it's an enormous opportunity right now for people who have the information, they have the willingness and work ethic to implement it. And then there is one third component that I want to talk about, which is patience. Oh yes, these markets fluctuate and there will be some big wins and some big losses. I'm going to let folks know that I will probably never sell some of my crypto. Okay, so even if I do take some profits off the table in the exact manner that you described, Rick, I will be always hanging on to some of it. And it's because these blockchains never die. There's no way to kill a sophisticated blockchain. And this even includes when things go very, very wrong for the crypto markets. Folks may have noticed that there have been a variety of times when both the government of China and the government of the United States has threatened cryptocurrency. They've threatened to ban it. They've threatened to tax it. They've threatened to, change the rules that are related to trading it. And in each of these cases, you've had folks come out from within the crypto community, objecting to these issues and telling people that it slows down progress. But none of them have said this will stop the progress. In fact, Charles Hoskinson came out during one of the US government's intrusions into crypto, and he said, look, you can do what you want and you will succeed in pushing some profit out of the United States. People will go elsewhere, but the blockchain will always continue to exist. There's no way to actually kill it. And remember that the technological benefits of the blockchain technology, the efficiencies that it creates, are so immense. It would be like finding out that a country tried to ban the internet. And, they could try, but they would never actually succeed. It would require a level of cooperation among nations that has never been experienced in our world, and I don't believe would ever come to pass, because it's far too easy for nations to simply allow it and then allow their economies to explode and expand based on the efficiencies. There is a scenario where the developed world does reject crypto, but the undeveloped world does not. And that eventually the undeveloped world becomes so profitable that the developed world has to go back and adopt crypto, adopt blockchain technologies to realize efficiencies so that they can compete with the undeveloped world. Now, I don't believe it'll ever come to that. But I will say this, that this is a brand new technology. It's just getting started. The rollouts have just begun. You have major blockchain projects like Cardano and Polkadot and Avalanche that aren't even completely fully built yet. They're functioning blockchains, they work, but all of the capacities, in fact, they're all running at about 5 to 10% capacity maximum. And those capacities will grow every year as capacity is added. They actually have almost unlimited capacity. And so it is likely that some of those bigger blockchains won't be functioning at 100 times more, but will actually be thousands and thousands of times more functional in a matter of a decade or two. But what that requires of the investor is patience. Patience through difficult times, patience through trials and tribulations. And hopefully this is sounding a little bit familiar to the Christian, to the believer. We understand this, we resonate with this. We're mentally and spiritually prepared for exactly this kind of an endeavor. And this is what gives me so much hope that Christians have an immense future in this space. For those of us who can get the good news early, figure out that this is a massive opportunity that's on our horizon, start to get involved in a very rational, dollar cost averaged, safe, well thought out, well planned way, and then be patient. I believe good things will come to those who wait. And I believe that Christians are well positioned to take advantage of this extraordinary opportunity. So that's my closing message for this particular show, Rick.
Well, that's great, Alex, and I do appreciate that. And I, of course, will second that. The idea of patience in anything generally is the wisest thing to do. And then if anybody has any questions or comments related to what we talked about today, certainly do put those there for us. And if you do like our content, be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification, and then, of course, let people know. Share what we're doing here with your friends. I don't think they even have to be Christians to be interested in this, but especially if they're Christians, we do want you to share this with them because we think it will resonate with them and be information that they can use. So again, thanks, Alex, for all of your in ideas about what we can look at and think about doing. And it's always very exciting to talk to you and to be able to gain more knowledge about this space. So I do appreciate that. And thank you so much for that today.
Sure thing. I can't wait until our next show. Take good care, Rick.
Great. Thanks, Alex. God bless.